Welcome back, everyone, to The Deep Dive. So today we're going to be digging into something that y'all specifically requested, and that is the connection between protein intake and kidney disease.
Okay.
You sent us this
Oh, yeah.
really intriguing article from Strength by Fitness
Right.
called The Health and Mortality Outcome from Kidney Disease with a High Protein Intake. And I got to say, it definitely piqued my interest.
Yeah, it is a fascinating article. It challenges a lot of common assumptions about protein and how it affects people with kidney issues, especially as we age.
Yeah, and it starts off with this big statement that kind of sets the stage. The older you are, the more protein you need.
Right.
And that makes sense, right?
Makes sense.
We get older, our bodies, they naturally start to lose muscle mass and function.
Mm-hmm.
So it would seem logical to, up your protein intake to combat that.
Yeah.
But then the question is, what if you already have some compromised kidney health?
Yeah.
Does that change things?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this article dives right in by highlighting a 2024 study that was published in JAMA Network Open.
Okay.
This study looked at over 8,500 adults, all 60 years or older, with an average age of 78.
Wow.
And examine their risk of dying from any cause,
Right.
what we call all-cause mortality,
Got it.
in relation to how much protein they consume.
And that's where it gets really interesting because they found that higher protein intake, regardless of whether it came from plants or animal sources,
Right.
was actually linked to a lower risk of death,
Mm-hmm.
even in those participants who had mild or moderate chronic kidney disease.
Exactly, CKD.
Yeah, which is not what we usually hear, right?
It really goes against the conventional wisdom,
Right.
Typically, people with CKD are advised to limit their protein intake.
Right.
But this study indicates something quite different might be happening.
Yeah.
That for those with CKD, a higher protein intake could actually be protective.
So instead of being harmful, it could be beneficial.
Potentially.
I'm really curious about the specifics here. Like, what kind of reductions in mortality risk are we talking?
Well, the study found some pretty striking numbers.
Okay.
And we can break it down like this in terms of grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day.
Okay.
Compared to those consuming 0.8 grams, individuals with CKD who consumed 1 gram saw their mortality risk decrease.
Wow.
Bump that up to 1.2 grams,
Yep.
and the risk drops even further.
Wow.
And at 1.4 grams, the risk plummets even more significantly.
Wow.
So each incremental increase in protein intake led to a substantial reduction in mortality risk.
That's huge.
Yeah.
What's your take on why higher protein might be linked to better survival in these folks?
Well, while the study itself doesn't really delve into the specific mechanisms, it's possible that maintaining muscle mass and strength through adequate protein intake plays a crucial role.
Yeah. Yeah.
Frailty and weakness are major concerns for older adults,
Especially with CKD.
especially those with CKD, exactly.
Yeah.
And a higher protein intake could help mitigate those risks.
So it's not just about the protein in the kidneys in isolation.
Right.
It's about the bigger picture of overall health and resilience.
Precisely. This study suggests that the benefits of adequate protein intake,
Yeah.
particularly in terms of muscle health and preventing frailty,
Mm-hmm.
may outweigh any potential concerns about kidney function, at least for those with mild to moderate CKD.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Kind of flips the script a little bit.
it really does.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
I'm curious to dig a little deeper into, some of the nuances here
Yeah, absolutely.
and maybe address some questions that I'm sure are coming up for our listener.
Sure.
Like, does this apply to everybody or is it just this very specific group?
Right.
So let's take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll unpack that a little bit more.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it really does underscore the importance of looking at the whole picture, right?
Absolutely.
When it comes to nutrition and chronic disease management.
It's interesting because for years, we've been told that people with CKD need to restrict protein.
Right.
And now this research seems to suggest the opposite might be true.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if maybe we've been a little too cautious.
Well, it definitely highlights the evolving nature of nutritional science, right?
Yeah,
What we thought we knew 10 years ago might be completely different today.
totally.
And that's why it's so crucial to stay up to date on the latest research.
Absolutely. But I imagine this study is raising a lot of questions for people with CKD.
Sure.
Like, for instance, the article mentions that the research focused specifically on adults over 60.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean these findings apply to younger individuals with CKD as well?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, this particular study doesn't give us a definitive answer.
Okay.
It's possible that the impact of protein intake on kidney health might vary depending on age. More research is definitely needed to explore how these findings might translate to younger populations with CKD.
Okay, so we need more research. But in the meantime, what's your advice for our listener who's specifically interested in this topic? What are some key takeaways they can apply to their own situation?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that if you have concerns about your kidney health or protein intake, the best thing you can do is have a conversation with your healthcare provider.
Yeah.
They can help you interpret this research in the context of your individual medical history and needs.
That's so important because it's tempting to try and apply these findings to ourselves, right?
Right.
But everybody's different.
Exactly.
What works for one person might not work for another.
And that's especially true when it comes to something as complex as kidney health.
Right.
There are so many factors to consider, and a blanket recommendation just isn't appropriate.
So speaking of individual needs, this study didn't really differentiate between types of protein.
Ah,
It just kind of lumped plant-based and animal-based proteins together.
right.
So do you think there could be a difference in how these protein sources affect people with CKD?
That's an excellent point. And it's definitely an area that warrants further investigation. While this study didn't find a significant difference based on protein source, other research suggests that plant-based proteins might be gentler on the kidneys.
Interesting.
Okay. So it's something to keep in mind.
So even though higher protein intake in general seems to be beneficial, the type of protein could still be a factor to consider.
Potentially, yeah.
This is also fascinating,
It is.
but it just goes to show how much more we still need to learn about the relationship between protein aging and kidney health.
Absolutely. And it underscores the importance of working with a knowledgeable healthcare professional
Yeah.
who can help you navigate these complexities and develop a dietary plan that's tailored to your specific needs.
So to wrap things up for our listener, the main takeaway from this deep dive is that the relationship between protein and kidney health is much more nuanced than we previously thought.
For sure.
What we used to think was harmful might actually be beneficial, at least for those with mild to moderate CKD.
Yeah.
But it's crucial to remember that this is just one study and more research is needed to confirm these findings.
Exactly. And this is precisely why it's so crucial to talk to your doctor or a registered dietitian before making any major changes to your diet, especially if you're managing a health condition like CKD.
Yeah.
Right? It's so easy to get caught up in, like the excitement of a new study.
Yeah,
But we always have to remember that, individual needs and medical histories play a huge role.
exactly.
You can't just, apply a broad brushstroke to everything.
Right. This deep dive has hopefully given you a new perspective on protein and kidney health,
Yeah,
one that challenges some of the old assumptions.
for sure. It's a complex issue,
Yeah.
but it's just the beginning of the conversation. There's still so much to learn.
It definitely is a fascinating area of research, and I'm curious to see where these future studies take us.
Me too.
But in the meantime, it sounds like the best approach for our listener and anyone really who's interested in this topic is to stay curious,
Yeah.
keep researching,
Mhm.
and most importantly, have an open dialogue with your healthcare provider.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. It's all about staying informed, asking questions, and working, together with your healthcare team to make the best decisions for your individual health.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive. We hope you found this exploration insightful and maybe even a little bit empowering. Until next time, keep diving deep.